We are now live, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I will call the meeting to order. We respectfully acknowledge that the County of Haliburton is located on Treaty 20 Michi-Saugeag territory and in the traditional territory of the Michi-Saugeag and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We acknowledge a shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of the lands and waters since time immemorial. Good evening, my name is Liz Danielson and I'm the chair of the Land Division Committee. I'd like to introduce you to the other members of the Land Division Committee. Andrea Roberts, who's standing in for Pat Kennedy on behalf of Dysart Council. Bob Snyder, public member representing Highlands East, and Bill Blakes, public member representing Minden Hills. Also with us this evening is Steve Stone, our planner, and Michelle Moore, Deputy Secretary Treasurer. The purpose of our hearing is to give each applicant or their authorized agent the opportunity to discuss their application with the committee and to respond to written submissions which have been received. It is also an opportunity for the committee to broaden our understanding of the application by asking questions. Members of the public who are participating virtually today may also make oral submissions to the committee and ask questions of the applicant. The procedure we use is to hear the applications in the same order as they were received in our office. Our Deputy Secretary Treasurer will introduce each application and our Director of Planning will provide a brief planning brief. When the participants registered for the meeting, the file number of the application they have an interest in was noted by staff. Participants wishing to take part in the hearing will be admitted virtually to the meeting and will be provided 5 minutes to speak to the committee. As chair, I will then ask members of the committee if they have any questions. We'll now proceed with the agenda. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda for this evening?
I'll move.
Moved by Bill, seconded by Andrea.
Moved by member Blake, second by member Roberts, be it resolved that the March 14th, 2022 Land Division Committee agenda be hereby approved.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's carried. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of the February the 14th meeting?
I'll move.
Moved by member Blake, seconded by member Snyder.
Moved by member Blake, second by member Schneider, be it resolved that the minutes of the Land Division Committee meeting held February 14th, 2022 be approved as printed and circulated.
Thank you. We will move on to the business of the evening. Starting with the application by Gonson for an easement of right-of-way.
Application for consent H-003 of 21. The applicant is Catherine Gonson. The location of the property is part of lot 5 and 6, concession 1 in the geographic township of Dudley, which is part lot 6, concession 33 in the township of geographic township of Dysart, now in the municipality of Dysart et al.
And Mr. Stone, would you like to speak to the application?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The application was presented initially to the committee last year, and it was in concert with several other applications, right-of-ways, in support of a plan of subdivision that was approved some time ago by County Council. And the applicant was wanting to establish right-of-ways for the individual lots within the plan of subdivision. And so the route they chose was to go through consents. What we determined more recently is that the plan of subdivision is not in a position to be registered at this point, and so there is a risk for these consent applications to lapse. The lapse date's coming up in a couple months, and so we felt it appropriate for committee to consider the addition of a condition that will allow the plan of subdivision to proceed to registration and also allow the applicants to register the right-of-ways at the time of registration. So by introducing this new condition, it allows the applicant 2 more years to finalize these consents. He is in attendance. If the committee would like, I can bring him in to allow him to talk.
Okay,
So Carl, you are now able to talk to the committee if you like.
good evening, Mr. Gonson. Is there anything that you'd like to add to the report that Mr. Stone has given?
Madam Chair, I think Mr. Stone has outlined the matter correctly. We appreciate the report before you and we support it. Thank you.
Do any members of the committee have questions of either Mr. Stone or Mr. Gonson? Member Roberts?
Thank you. Just briefly, and maybe this isn't a question that needs to be answered here today, but Mr. Gonson, I know these properties have been listed for sale, so I suppose they can't actually sell if they haven't actually been registered. So is this sort of the last step then that needs to take place?
They are listed for sale, but they can't actually be sold until
Yep.
the subdivision is registered. And yes, Mr. Stone has outlined it correctly that there's a possibility that the subdivision could be registered a little bit too late for the rights of ways to be created to be attached to the subdivision. So this gives some extra time for all the agencies, the departments, Mr. Stone and his staff, to clear the conditions for us to do our work.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on this application? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to hear the resolution? Moved by Member Roberts,
Second.
seconded by Member Blakes.
Moved by Member Roberts, second by Member Blakes. Be it resolved that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton receive the report entitled Land Division Staff Report, Consent H-003 of 21 Gonson, Change of Conditions, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton approve the changing conditions of approval as described in the said report. The decision is that a change of conditions on this file be granted. Member Roberts, what say you, yay or nay?
Yay.
Member Schneider, what say you?
Yay.
Member Blakes?
Yay.
Chair Danielson?
Yay,
Thank you.
that's carried. Thank you. So the next two applications are basically the same general file. If you would go over the next file number, please, Mr. Stone.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. You're absolutely correct. There's actually the next three applications are the same. And they're right-of-ways for individual lots within the plan of subdivision that's draft approved. So the condition that's being added, if the committee approves it, will extend the lapsing date for another 2 years, allowing the applicant to register his plan of subdivision in advance of finalizing these consents. Thank you.
Are there any questions of this next application? Could I have a mover and a seconder to put the motion forward?
I would move. I'll second.
Member Schneider and Blakes.
Moved by Member Schneider, second by Member Blakes. Be it resolved that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton receive the report entitled Land Division Staff Report, Consent H-004 of 21 Gonson, Change in Conditions, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton approve the change in conditions of approval as described in the said report. The decision is that the change of conditions be granted. Member Roberts, what say you? Yea or nay?
Yay.
Member Schneider?
Yay.
Member Blakes?
Yay.
Chair Danielson?
Yay. That's carried. Item 6.3.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Same as the last two applications, this is a change in conditions, adding a condition that will allow for the plan of subdivision to be registered either in advance or concurrent with the finalization of these consents. And the new lapsing date will be two years out now.
Are there any questions on this application? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to put the motion forward? Member Roberts. Member Schneider.
Moved by member Roberts, second by member Schneider. Be it resolved that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton received the report entitled Land Division Staff Report, Consent H-005 of 21 in the name of Gonson, change of conditions, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton approve the change in conditions approve the change in conditions of approval as described in the said report. The change of conditions shall be granted. Member Roberts, what say you, yay or nay?
Yay.
Member Schneider?
Yay.
Member Blakes?
Yay.
Chair Danielson?
Yay. And finally, item 6.4.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the last of the Gonson applications. Similar to the first three, it's an addition of condition that will allow the subdivision to be registered either prior to or concurrent with the finalization of this consent. The consent is for a right-of-way that it'll provide access to one of the lots within that plan of subdivision. Thank you.
Any questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder to put the motion on the floor, please?
Move.
Member Blakes, seconded by member Schneider.
Moved by member Blake, second by member Snyder. Be it resolved that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton received the report entitled Land Division Staff Report, Consent H-026 of 21 in the name of Gonson, change in conditions, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton approved the change in conditions of approval as described in the said report. The decision is that the change of conditions be granted. Member Roberts, what say you? Yay or nay?
Yay.
Member Snyder?
Yay.
Member Blakes?
Yay.
Chair Danielson?
Yay.
You?
Thank you, Mr. Gonson.
Thank you.
That concludes the business arising from previous meetings. We will now move into item number 7, consideration of applications for consent, starting with an application to create a new lot by Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Similar to the previous 4 applications, this consent was actually before the committee last year. In the process of trying to clear conditions, the agent realized that there was a deviation in terms of lot configuration, primarily the frontage for the lots. And the reason for the deviation was they realized that a septic system would be straddling one of the newly created lot lines. So they also discovered that there was an error in one of the conditions requiring the county roads department, the township roads department to be a clearance agency, when in fact the clearance was coming from the county public works department. So they requested a change in conditions that dealt with those issues. We have done an internal circulation, and it was determined that the one condition related to clearance for the entrance would actually be deleted and not changed, and added as a note for reference purposes in the future. With that, if committee grants the change in conditions, this will allow for them to complete their survey work. The change of condition also allows them 2 years to complete that part of the process. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't believe there's anyone here to speak to this application.
No, that's right. The agent's not in attendance.
Do any of the members have questions with respect to this application? All right, then could I have a mover and a seconder to hear the motion? Moved by member Snyder, seconded by member Roberts.
Moved by member Snyder, second by member Roberts, be it resolved that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton received the report entitled Land Division Staff Report, Consent H-15 of 21 in the name of Ellis, change of conditions, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton approved the reconfiguration of the proposed lot to recognize the location of the existing septic system and increases to the frontage on Loop Road, subject to the change of conditions of approval as described in the said report. The decision is that the change of conditions be granted. Member Roberts, yea or nay?
Yay.
Member Snyder?
Yay.
Member Blakes?
Yay.
Chair Danielson?
Yay. That's carried. Next is an application by Parish for the creation of a new lot, together with an easement for a right-of-way. Mr. Stone, if you'd like to speak to this application.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you very much. This application is for the creation of a new lot. I'm not sure if there's if you want me to share my screen, I can show the consent sketch if you would like, or I could wait for the applicant's agent to do that if you would like. That being said, the creation of the new lot is in an area that's rural in the county, and it's also in rural lands from a provincial policy statement perspective. And when it comes to the local official plan, it's in an area designated for waterfront development. In terms of reviewing the proposal, it was determined that consistency with the provincial policy statement was achieved, and conformity with both the county official plan and the township official plan. It was reviewed with the local municipality providing municipal comments in favor of the application being approved by the committee subject to conditions. And there was also a peer review done in terms of looking at the EIS that was supplied by the applicant's agent in support of the application. Comments were received by the county's peer review consultant and shared with the agent's peer consultant, and comments noted in response. Part of the conditions of approval that the township requested includes a severance agreement that will allow for the implementation of the recommendations in the EIS report to ensure environmental sustainability. It should also be noted that the retained land or the retained lot is subject to a right-of-way, and the severed lot is together with a right-of-way, and those weren't noted in the recommendation of the report. I'm happy to bring in the agents, and there's two of them. One's a planning consultant, the other one's a legal representative of the applicant if the committee would like.
If you wouldn't mind sharing the sketch that you have that came with the application, from my perspective, I found the sketch attached to the consultant's report a little bit difficult to read.
Can you see it now?
Yep.
Yeah, you can. Okay.
Pardon me,
Go
Chair.
ahead.
Could we just zoom just a little bit?
So let me see if I can do that. Hang on a second. Nope.
Okay.
There we are. So this would be the lot to be severed. Is that good?
Thank you.
All right.
And I can, hopefully I can pan. Let's see. I guess I will. And this is the subject right away shown here. And if I can pan further out and down. So that is the right of way that I was referred to as subject to and together with. And this is the balance or the retained piece. And moving over, these are the lands to be severed. So.
Okay, I guess at this point we would bring in the consultants or the applicant's representatives.
Okay, let me see if I can unshare
So
this.
that would be Melissa Markham and Paul Dice. Is that correct?
No, the agent is Kent, and Kent and Megan would be the agents. So I'm just going to stop sharing this if I can. Okay, here. Give me a second here.
It might help to keep the sketch up.
Yeah, it's a challenge when you're sharing to do that. So I can't seem to unshare. Just hang on a second. Yeah. Might have to ask Mike. Just give me a second, please.
Okay. You want to put yourself on mute for a minute then?
Yes, thank you.
Steve, is it on just the bottom of your screen? When you scroll the mouse over, that little bit pops up even on my screen right now that I could share my
There's
screen.
the share screen button.
Yeah, so you have to sort of scroll the mouse over your screen and then participants chat, raise hand, that, and then you just, like, I can see share screen on mine, but I'm not sharing my screen. Do you see what I mean? You should be able to unshare. You're on mute now still.
Nothing like having technical challenges in the middle of a meeting.
Now the other option, Chair Daniels? Oh,
There you go.
there you go. Never mind. I was going to say something else.
You're on mute still, Steve.
So I'll bring in Kent and Megan now. So there we go.
Good evening, Madam Chair, committee members and staff. My name is Megan Beck. I am counsel for the applicants Robin and Constance Parrish, which, as Steve already introduced us, application 2821 for the property municipally known as 1087 Triple Creek Lane. I understand from reading the public comments that there are questions and concerns regarding the access for this severance, so I'd like to address that. One of the conditions recommended by Algonquin Highlands, as well as the county, is for the current driveway on the proposed severed lands being stopped up along the boundary between the severed and retained lands. I don't know, Steve, if you can bring up the sketch again, or I can share my screen.
We dare you.
Well, I can certainly try and.
Okay, I think it'd be helpful if we could.
All right. So let's see. Let me. Oh,
Lovely.
can you see it now?
Yeah, if we can zoom in so we can get a better view of the severed piece.
So this piece here.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's too bad you can't see my cursor, but where I believe needs to be stopped up is where that circular drive comes around and meets the red line of the severed parcel boundary. So we would like to ask committee to clarify this condition, being condition number 9 in the staff report, and specify how exactly we should stop up this area in order to have clarity in the condition so our client can adequately fulfill it. We understand in these circumstances that a fence may be adequate. So whatever way you would like us to properly stop that up, we'd just like some clarification on that.
I think if I might, there were more than one access concern.
Yes. Yes, this is the first one I was going to address.
Okay.
I didn't know if we wanted to talk about it right now, or we can summarize at the end.
That was not clear as to how it would be stopped up and closed in Algonquin Highlands. And I had assumed, likely incorrectly, that the closure would be at the green property line, not at the red property line. And that was my assumption. But
So
you might do better, because we will be hearing, there's a number of people who want to speak to the application. So you might have to answer questions from a number of different people if you're going to be the main spokesperson for the application.
yes, I would comment that if we stopped it up at the green line, we'd be removing access for the retained parcel. So that wouldn't be ideal, because that property would no longer have access to Triple Creek Lane.
There was also a note, the drawings have been a little bit confusing, because drawings that were shown, in different places showed the access into the workshop on what will be the retained parcel, showing a little bit differently. And also there's been some information provided that access actually comes all the way down to the lakefront. Now, exactly what point it lands, whether it's on the retained or the severed parcel, I'm not sure.
Okay, we definitely could, I don't know if Kent can speak to that at all. I can finish up a couple more comments on access, and then maybe we can go to Kent.
Yeah, that's fine by me, Megan.
Okay, so we'll make sure to note that issue, Kent, and come back to it.
Yep.
So just to give a little history, because access seems to be the major issue on this application. And there has been concern over using four-wheel drive to access the severed property, and it has been suggested that the severed lot may be better to have access via right-of-way to Triple Creek Lane, which is to the north, and four-wheel drive is to the south. Originally, when my client applied for a severance on this property in 2020, they did apply for access via Triple Creek Lane, which is again to the north. This was met with concern by some of the surrounding property owners, who now we also have some objections to four-wheel drive on the current application. But back in 2020, their planner suggested our client apply for access via the existing right-of-way on four-wheel drive. So that is the application we brought to you today. As Stephen Stone advised, both county and township have supported this application, and our clients are agreeable to all conditions, subject to hopefully some clarification on the stopping up point, as well as the method of stopping up, so we can adequately satisfy that condition. We do ask that committee approve this application. But Kent, if you want to maybe come in and comment on that, I guess, near the workshop access.
Sure. This is Kent Randall, principal planner at EcoView Consulting. So that access, and I do apologize for the plan that we've shown here, which shows it's an overlay of those lines on a survey or a draft R plan. It's meant to be printed in 11 by 17. So I think what happened was when it went out in the notice and maybe when it was published in the agenda, it might not have come out as clear as it should have. So my apologies for that. So in terms of the driveway, I'm not sure about how far down it goes. This was that driveway shown is from when the surveyor, when Greg Bishop surveying went out and actually did the locates of those buildings and the existing features on the site. So that's all I can speak to at this point. As Megan said, we are providing, there's the access from Triple Creek Lane, which is providing, that's providing access to the severed, Triple Creek Lane's providing access to the retained, four-wheel drives providing access to the severed. But it is important to note that the access from Triple Creek Lane is not, we're not adding any additional lots to that access. It is still providing access to one lot. So that's as Megan said, this has been modified in a way that in order to address concerns that had come up at with the previous application. And so that's why you're seeing this configuration today. We do think that it works, and of course, as Megan noted, we concur with the recommendations. And I'm happy to answer any further questions if they do come up.
As am I.
I guess we would ask for those who wish to speak to the application to come in and speak individually. And we'll reserve questions from the committee until we've heard from all speakers.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'll invite the people in individually. If I could ask Kent and Megan just to remain muted, and that way I won't lose you and you can listen to the comments being made. So thank you for your patience. So do you want me just to do it in order of?
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful.
That's fine. So the first one is just a phone call in, and it's a 416 number. So I don't know who this individual is, but I will ask them to join the meeting and say if they're actually interested in this application. To the person that's on the phone, if you can unmute yourself and address the committee, are you interested in providing comments on the parish consent application?
You're on mute.
Oh, I just allow them again to talk.
Maybe they're not sure how to unmute as it was. Plan 6.
Well, I think what we'll do is we'll move on to the next one, Cheryl. So, hi, Cheryl, if you could unmute yourself and address the committee.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Can you? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you very much for letting me speak. I just have a few comments, actually. The application by Mr. Parrish says that the right-of-way is owned by Robin Parrish and maintained by the cottage users, share cost of maintenance, and they plow year-round, which is not 100% correct because we do contributions individually. We look after different portions. It's not a road association that looks after the road. You know, we only plow on the weekends. I plow myself for the weekdays when I'm here. So that is one thing. The second item is under the CHOP. There are several requirements. It has to be, you have to consider adequate road access, drainage, traffic hazards, and natural hazards. The existing traveled road, the right-of-way does not follow the actual registered instruments. So the Mr. Bishop calls it a traveled road. So you can't create an easement over something which is not there. The easement itself is, the registered easement is simply what, as you show on the plan, but the physical, because of the way of the land, the hill and so forth, it actually goes around and it travels on a different path. So the easement do not match with the drawing. It's like the traveled road does not match with the drawings. Part of that is where I have an adverse possession claim. At the top of where the hill comes down and goes around, I have an adverse possession claim. I've had that since the 1990s, 1990. So I've asked the committee to adjourn this until that's resolved. Going back to the actual right-of-ways, it says under COOP that you can extend a road, but this isn't an extension. You're trying to create a new road over it, which is not quite the same. As I said before, we maintain the road sometimes together, but it's not fully maintained year round. Increasing the usage by other persons will cause issues. You know, if you go, only one person, one vehicle can go up or down the hill. It's a very steep hill. So somebody has to back up. In the winter, you can't do that with the snow. It's impossible. In fact, this year, we've had two vehicles go into the ditch and 2 plows have gone into the ditch on the hill because it's a very steep hill. Okay, EMS will not come down the hill to individual cottages due to the steep hill. We've had issues with the EMS trying to help people on the road. The second thing is on the letter from titlers, I just have a couple of comments there. This is generally on right-of-ways. They talk about instrument number H55634, which is actually the deed to the shepherds. It is not the deed which created all the right-of-ways. The right-of-ways are shown on the plan which is attached, which is Plan C4. All of the right-of-ways which you're referencing as H55634 were created by different easements all the way down to Fern Gully. They're not contiguous, they're pieces. But they've been brought forward into land titles conversion qualified by way of this, this deed on Mr. Parrish's property. Now, going back to that, on the north part, going to Triple Creek Lane, that's another easement, which was actually 3053, not H55634 in the original grant of easement. So in that case, if you do a new right-of-way and you're trying to stop up the usage, you have to release and abandon his right or that right of that severed lands for those on Triple Creek. That's the other issue you have. It's not a case of doing a physical barrier. You have to remove those rights from that piece of property, the Triple Creek. On the letter going down farther, they say that the Triple Creek, the right-of-way allows the owners of 1087 to access the portion of Triple Creek Lane to the north to access Bashcon Lake Road, shown in green. Those attachments were not sent to everybody with the package. Thank you, Steve, for sending them to me. As well as access four-wheel drive and Fern Gully Lane to the south, shown in yellow. The respective owners along this right-of-way also have a right to use this right-of-way for access, which is incorrect. The Shepherd lands do not have, or the parish lands do not have an easement. They own the fee. You can't have an easement over lands to benefit yourself. They own the fee. So that paragraph is really not quite correct. I think that's basically my comments, but I do object because I have an adverse possession claim. If you want to bring up the sketch, Steve, and go to the bottom of the hill, you can see very clearly that I have an adverse possession claim. It's fenced off. It has been for over 30 years. Can you bring up the sketch? Thank you so much.
I will try.
The surveyor has said that he can't do the sketch for it. Mr. Parrish has objected to Mr. Bishop preparing the sketch showing the adverse possession lands. So I've had to go somewhere else, but he can't do it because with the snow there. So that's why I'm asking for the extension. So if you come, you have to go down a bit, Steve. And then if you could blow up that piece in the center where the road comes down and turns around.
So you mean up at the very top, you mean?
No, go down to four-wheel drive.
Right. So down in this section in here?
Yes, the center there. If you blow up that where the road comes down the hill. No, go down. No, you're at the bottom.
I'm at the bottom, okay. So
You're at the bottom of the survey. You have to go up midway. It's halfway down.
Right.
Go up, go up, go up, go up. Up farther. You have to go to show the road.
This portion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go down there, and if you look to the right, you'll see the road curves around.
Right in this area here?
Right, and
Okay.
there's like a finger sticking in it. Well, that road where it goes to is called the Y. So if
Right.
it goes to the north and to the south. I have all that fenced off for like 30 something years, that whole bulbous piece. And my driveway comes up in there. I have a paved driveway. So that's where I have adverse possession. So you can't create another easement over it because I have a claim on it. That's basically it. Now, as I said, you can clearly see that the road does not follow the actual physical easement. The physical road doesn't follow the registered easement. Now, as I said, Greg Bishop calls it a traveled road because it doesn't follow it. So you can't use the old description for a new easement. You'd have to create a whole new easement. It would have to be done on a reference plan.
Complete the points you'd like to make, Ms. Richmond?
That's my point. Thank you so much for hearing it.
I just wondered if any of the members of the committee have any questions, or if Ms. Beck, legal counsel, has any questions.
I would like to speak, but committee members can go first if they'd like.
Are there any questions at this point from committee members of Ms. Richmond?
Not at this point from Bill.
Okay,
Not at this point.
okay. You would like to speak to those
Yes,
Comments?
yes, I would.
Okay.
So thank you, Cheryl, for your comments. With regard to the alleged adverse possession claim, that is being claimed over a right-of-way that benefits all of the owners along Fern Gully Lane. The law does not support an adverse possession claim along a right-of-way because all of those owners need to have open access to use it in order to access their property. Either way, this claim is not relevant to the application at hand and would be properly addressed by filing a notice of claim on title. And I do not see any such notice of claim on title. If the committee is concerned about this claim, I've spoken to our client and I think I have a solution that would work. So, Steve, I don't know if you can pull up that map again. I'm so sorry.
I think we need to leave it up.
It's tricky when you're adding people in and out, and I guess with the map getting in the way.
There you go. The beauty of having 3 screens, I now have figured it out where that stop sharing function is. It's on the 3rd screen. It took me a while to find it. Thanks, Andrea.
Steve, would you mind scrolling up back to showing the severed piece? So I did speak with our client and Madam Chair, you are correct. The gravel driveway, and I don't know, Steve, if you want to go to the left a little, it does come and meet the severed property. So at this juncture, with the comments, we've received so far, we propose that the existing right-of-way become a new right-of-way to serve this property. This way, we won't have any issues with the people to the south having access to their property or redescribing, things that topographically have changed over time, as well as we wouldn't have to be addressing any alleged adverse possession claims. So we could do an R plan and put the right of way across our client's property. So it's the existing gravel driveway. He'd, do the survey cost for that, as well as take on the burden of having another right of way on his property. But that way, the owners don't have to be concerned about Triple Creek Lane, nor do they have to be concerned about 4-wheel drive. And of course, we may have to amend this. We'll have to amend the application to revise that, but the committee can consider that possibility. Might be a solution to some of the public's concerns.
That might be a solution. You're right. But we would also, I think, still have to deal with the issue of Triple Creek Drive, of the stop up enclosure in
Of course.
Okay.
Yes.
Member Roberts has a question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If it was that simple, why didn't they consider that before? I have no idea of the topography of this. I'm looking at a flat piece of paper, so it doesn't show contour. We've talked about steep drives and difficult with EMS or people getting stuck, so just curiosity, it seems like an easy fix to continue that what we're calling the existing gravel driveway to get it to access to what you're proposing to be severed. Why wouldn't that have been taken into consideration at the beginning?
At the beginning, we originally proposed Triple Creek Lane. I'm not sure, that was a couple of years ago, what the status of the driveway was at that time. However, it was upon the suggestions of the planner for the objecting landowner or the surrounding landowners who had put in a letter from Marie Poirier, and she suggested that we use the access for 4-wheel drive. So considering her review, we took that advice to use 4-wheel drive, and again, didn't realize that there'd be concerns at this point over that use. And then this opportunity also presented itself.
Okay, thank you. It seems like obviously there's quite a bit of history here, so I'm just getting up to speed.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess we will move on to the next speaker.
Yeah, so that would be Douglas Rumble. So again, I'll let him address the committee.
I'm sorry, that person's name is not on my list.
Okay.
Did you say Douglas?
Douglas Rumble, yes.
Or Doug Rumble. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So good evening, and I appreciate your time. My question is one of concern in terms of what environmental studies have been taken on these properties as it relates to endangered species and the wildlife that tends to be available in all this property that's within the plan.
Madam Chair, this is Kent Randall. I can answer that question.
Okay, thank you, Ken.
We did undertake an environmental impact study. It was undertaken by Riverstone. As Mr. Stone alluded to at the beginning, the study was peer reviewed by the county's peer review consultant. The study looked at species at risk, and it looked at fish habitat in the lake, looked at possible impacts from development on the lake and on those species, on potential species. It provided a number of recommendations. Most of them are related to naturalization of the shoreline and maintaining the natural features of the shoreline and the littoral zone. And those recommendations, as Mr. Stone had mentioned, are going to be registered as part of an agreement, a mitigation agreement, and that will require the landowners to follow those recommendations. Also, the properties are going to be rezoned to shoreline residential exception zones in order to identify the existing any existing non-complying setbacks from the water, as well as ensure that any new development is appropriately set back from the water. So there's been a lot of consideration taken in terms of natural heritage in the environment, and as I said, those recommendations from that report are going to be implemented on site.
Thank you for your answer. What was the timeline of the assessment that you undertook? And what time of year was that?
Through the chair, I would have to check. I believe that I just have to look here at I've got it in front of me here just to double check the time. Let me see here. I believe that there was a spring survey. Just give me 1 second. Yeah, so there was a winter survey looking at deer wintering habitat. And I can't confirm if there was a spring survey, but I can get that answer for you if you'd like.
I would like that. Thank you.
Okay.
So it doesn't sound to me like we have confirmation on this point, which is concerning. My last question is, what compliancy has been undertaken within the plan on the runoff and storm drains that could be required for this property and the severing of this property with the easements? Knowing that the way the water is running off the back of the property to the west of Bashcon Lake, and with the environment the way it is, being somewhat unstable, we see a tremendous amount of water coming down through these properties, which has direct impact once things start to be severed. Properties need to be irrigated properly and storm drains need to be installed. Has a defining impact on the existing homes, cottages that are existing. What has been done in effect to mitigate that risk to the existing homeowners, landowners?
Through the chair, I'm not sure if it's a question about what is, so are you asking what is being done now? Like in terms of stormwater issues related to the site?
Yeah, so my question is two parts, obviously. What is included in the plan that will mitigate water flow from a west to east direction towards Lake Bashcon? And what is in the plan to mitigate any damage to the existing properties in the plan that's being applied for?
Okay, so the first question, the mitigation related to stormwater or grading and drainage is typically, in something like this, in our experience, is typically what you're looking at is preserving the shoreline setback area. And as I said, we have that in place. And then that also applies to any new development, of course, that it has to be at least 30 meters back from the shoreline. In terms of, there's nothing in place for mitigation we don't anticipate any damage to adjacent property owners. That's not something that we would typically anticipate in something like this, given the level of development. So there's no plan in place to mitigate against damage because we're not expecting damage. I guess that would be my answer. It's not something that we would, given the level of development, that we would typically anticipate happening. When we're looking at something like this, we're trying to determine if it meets and is consistent with provincial policy. That includes policies related to stormwater and natural heritage. So, it is our opinion that it's consistent with those policies.
Last question. Have you and or your client been witness to any erosion, stormwater, and or runoff at any time of the calendar year?
Through the chair, are you talking about on the property?
Well, I'm
anywhere?
Talking about the property and the properties that are in question and on the map that Steve Stone has put up. Bashcon Lake from the west to the east to the lake. Have you witnessed and or made recommendation, witnessed any of that at any time of the year?
Through the chair, if you're asking if I've witnessed erosion, no, I have not witnessed erosion. I can't speak for my client.
Okay, thank you.
I can comment too. I believe earlier you spoke about the time of the year of the environmental impact study. I know Ken didn't have some time. I've located that it was done in June and July of 2021, as well as with regard to concerns about drainage and grading. The current buildings and septic system is all existing. That's not changing at this time. If someone were to build in the future, in order to get their building permit, they would need to do a site plan that would address drainage issues, grading, and make sure that it adequately complies with the bylaws as well as the building code and environmental as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. Do any members of the committee have questions of Mr. Rumble?
No.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rumble.
Thank you.
Your voice has been heard. If we could move on to the next presenter.
So that will be Melissa. If I'll allow her to talk. Oop, I'm there. Hang on a second.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, okay. Your name is Melissa Markham.
Yes, my name is Melissa Markham, and I'm a senior planner for Marie Poirier Planning and Associates.
Okay.
It's at 44 King William Street, Unit A, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H1G3. So good evening, committee members and staff. I'm here this evening representing cottage owners on Four Wheel Drive and Fern Gully Lane. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to address the application. In principle, we're not opposed to the creation of the new lot. However, I'd like to restate some comments which we had made previously with regards to access. I'll keep my comments brief and to the following items: access and future development of the retained lands. Our firm, on behalf of the property owners along Four Wheel Drive and Fern Gully Lane, reviewed the previous applications submitted by the owners and provided a detailed letter to the Township of Algonquin Highlands in June of 2020, and again on September 23rd regarding applications on these lands. Once again, there's no indication as to the requirement for an additional right-of-way to the subject lands. The proposed severed lot currently benefits from a driveway and a municipal access from Triple Creek Lane. I think we've gone tonight to discuss the gravel driveway, and I will state that in the environmental impact study that was submitted by the applicant, there is a sketch that's provided which does identify the gravel driveway connecting with Triple Creek Lane. So if we're looking for the schedule for that, that does actually identify, as submitted by the applicant, the gravel driveway does connect to the severed property. So it does sound like the applicants are willing to change the existing right-of-way, which is the proposed existing gravel driveway to the property. So I believe our clients would be in support of that application. As we stated, access has already been secured to the severed lands by two existing driveways, and one of them is the gravel driveway. The addition of a third driveway would require site alteration and tree removal, which is not required by maintaining the existing right-of-way. The submitted EIS states that currently the subject property is accessed via private driveway connecting to Triple Creek Lane, as well as a private driveway off of Bashcon Lake Road. The EIS includes the existing driveways on the sketch and recommends to minimize the number and length of driveways servicing the proposed lot, and that the design of the driveway will consider the proposed mitigation during the design phase. It is expected that the driveway will be as straight as possible. If, as we've heard tonight, that the owner would be willing to revise the existing right-of-way to be the location of the proposed existing gravel driveway, we would be in support of that. As I stated, and you've heard here tonight, the property owners along Four Wheel Drive have stated that there are considerable topographic challenges and that both the existing gravel driveway and Triple Creek Lane are much easier to traverse. As shown on the aerial photo included in the environmental impact study, there is a wetland and pond located at a higher elevation than Four Wheel Drive. Topographic information identified the elevation from the wetland to the lake, and it's approximately 50 feet. In the spring, the runoff from the pond and the overland flow has impacts on crossing the road. Even though large culverts have been installed by the owners, this road floods for long periods in the spring, making the road almost inaccessible. The prior application that was submitted by the applicants had also identified a right-of-way to water on the lands. So we are happy to see that that has been removed in this current application. The second issue is the use of the retained lands. The second concern that we had with the application was that both the Algonquin Highlands staff report, and as restated in the County of Haliburton report, the principal use is to be established on the severed lands and will need to comply with the current zoning bylaw and be a minimum 30 meter from the high water mark. There is already a dwelling established on the severed land, which does not comply with the 30 meter setback, and relief is being sought for the side yard setback. The retained lands also contain a structure with a septic, which through our clients have been informed that there are sleeping accommodations already established on the retained lands. Our firm, on behalf of the property owners on Four Wheel Drive and Fern Gully, also provided in-depth comments on the proposed use of the retained lands. There is no indication in the staff report or submitted planning justification as to the proposed use of the retained lands, other than for future residential use. In a previous staff report, the retained lands were referred to as backlots. However, this reference has been removed in this application. The confusion with this application is with regards to the waterfront backlots versus rural use of the retained lands. This is not resolved with the recommended condition, which is number 2, which states that portions of the proposed retained lands be rezoned from rural to shoreline residential to recognize the deficient lot frontage. We're inquiring here tonight as to what portion of the lands will be rezoned. If any of the lands other than the portion at the shore are rezoned, a review of the backlot policy should have been included in the report. While we are aware that any future zoning bylaw amendment application will go through a separate planning application, we believe that the lands that staff are recommending for rezoning be specified in the conditions. The submitted EIS also identifies several features on the retained lands, which could impact any future development on the retained parcel: a pond, wetland, and water course. We're also recommending that these features, being 3 water courses, 2 wetlands, and a pond, be zoned such that these features are protected and placed into an appropriate environmental protection zone. We would suggest that the site-specific zoning bylaw restrict all lots to the resulting minimum lot area and frontages such that none of the lots could be further severed, and that only the waterfront portion of the retained lands be zoned to SR2. We would also suggest that the Section 5126 agreement could also prevent any further right-of-way across the severed or retained lands, which would provide access to the water. In summary, we are requesting the following: that the right-of-way application to be over an existing driveway, that the retained lands be rezoned to identify the existing features, that only the first 100 meters of the shoreline be rezoned to SR2, and that the Section 5126 agreement include that no further right-of-way can be established across the severed or retained lands for future access to the water. If committee agrees with the comments regarding access and the use of the retained lands, we do have some revised wording that could be added into condition number 4 and condition number 12. Thank you.
Do committee members have questions of Ms. Markham? Member Roberts.
Thank you. Maybe more through to Steve Stone. Just is it? I know I've seen a dicert where you can have one property that has 2 zones on it, as Ms. Markham said. So her recommendation for the retained to have a dual zone is how do we as the land division committee make that recommendation back? And could you just expand on that further?
Well, so the simple answer is yes, you can have multiple zones on a property. You can zone it in such a way as it strips certain uses out of the zone as well. The suggestion to have environmental features in a separate environmental zone can be done as well. How you can do that is you can spell it out more specifically in the conditions that you're approving, but ultimately keep in mind that it is the local township's authority to rezone lands, but it can certainly be stated as such in the conditions. And then it would be up to the local council to abide by the condition if we are to clear it eventually.
Go ahead, Mr. Snyder.
This is probably a question for Steve. There's been a couple of points during the discussion tonight, presentations, where there's indication that there may be uses that are not permitted in the zone, both with the boathouse and the other structure. I guess it's a garage or a barn. Condition 13 says that the subject lands be inspected to confirm zoning, building, and other permitted compliance. Will this include the structures on the retained land? And can you give me an indication of how detailed that inspection will be?
Well, again, that's a condition that was requested by the township council. So it would be up to their planner and their building department staff to investigate the property with the assistance of the applicant and go through the buildings in question and verify what they're used for and whether they comply with the existing zoning on the property. And if as
such, all the structures on the retained land would actually be considered accessory structures at this point?
Certainly, as the property is now, yes. And I would imagine, although I'm not familiar with the local zoning bylaw, but most zoning bylaws in Ontario stipulate you're only allowed to have one primary use on the property, being a dwelling or a cottage. And so that's the purpose of condition number 13, is really to do an investigation in terms of zoning compliance. And that will be, as I said, undertaken with municipal staff, with the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
Member Blakes.
Hi, I was just wanting if someone out there can give me a bit of a recap over everything, because I've been trying to follow this on a map on my phone. And there's been some comments made that one of the properties on either the severed lot or the retained lot is occupied. Did I hear that correctly?
You did hear that correctly. That's
Yeah. Which one is occupied?
on the retained parcel. There is a workshop, and I believe in one of the buildings there is accommodation, kitchen facilities. There's already a septic system on the property, although that information is not. I do not believe that was included in the information that we've been provided.
No, it wasn't. I didn't see that. Second question was, I've just figured out where four-wheel drive is. The property to be severed, access to that property will be via four-wheel drive or an extension to the existing gravel driveway across the retained land.
I think what is being proposed at this point in time is that access to the severed parcel would come across the existing gravel, what's called existing gravel driveway, because it does extend through to the what's to be severed.
Oh, it does. It doesn't show it on the map then, so that's incorrect. And the loop coming from the top, that's going to be access is going to be blocked off. There was a comment made that is going to be blocked off at the property line off the retained property. Is that correct?
I believe what Ms. Beck said was that that was something that needed to be clarified about how that would be achieved, but it would be on the property line of the severed parcel. So I think I'm not looking at the drawing, but I think it's a red line.
Yeah, there's a red line, and then further up, there's a green line, which is actually the property line. So.
Correct, Madam Chair. The red line is the border of the separate parcel.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. I can address some of Member Blake's comments.
If you could, please.
So I know there's been some commentary regarding being living accommodations in, our client called it the workshop or his barn. It has been inspected by bylaw for Algonquin Highlands. And all structures that have been spoken of have been inspected and received permits, and all permits have been signed off on. When the inspector was there, they also saw that there was no living accommodations there. I believe, our client has grandchildren, so there's a mattress there because it's a playroom and things like that. So I think that's kind of a miscommunication. That's the clarity my client wants to provide.
Okay. And you're confirming that the existing gravel driveway will be the access to the severed lot, is that correct?
Yes, we're agreeable to that amendment to the application.
What was the original, was that on four-wheel drive?
Yes, the original proposed right-of-way was going to be on four-wheel drive.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe maybe what we should do is bring in our next delegate.
Sorry, Madam Chair, before we do that, may I just speak to the suggestion of the split zoning? This is Kent Randall here.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I just I disagree with that approach. The retained lands are not a backlot. We're not creating a backlot here. It has frontage on the lake. It is wrapping around, but it's not a backlot. The split zoning, I think, is taking it a little further than we need to take it. The retained lands are going to be rezoned. There are going to be site-specific provisions associated with that zone that's going to apply to the property. So there really isn't a necessity to split the zoning and call one rural and call the other shoreline residential, when we can put it in one category and have specific requirements, associated with that site-specific exception. And then the suggestion, however, about the EP zone applying to those features, absolutely, we are more than happy to do that, and we will do that as part of the zoning bylaw amendment process with the local municipality.
I think, Mr. Randall, that one of the concerns has been for quite some time about this property is that this might not be the last severance that's requested. And I think that's why some of these questions are coming at you from members of the public. And that has been kind of backed up by an earlier application that was brought forward to Algonquin Highlands that showed a whole line of surveyed or sketched out backlots off four-wheel drive.
Right. And yes, Madam Chair, and I do understand that concern. I have heard those rumblings before. I think what I would say, though, is that splitting the zoning may actually work against that that request to not have those backlots, that backlot area developed, because it sort of invites the idea that you have a back area and a waterfront area. And we don't know what would happen maybe 15 or 20 years down the line if somebody's looking at that zoning and thinking along the lines of that. But certainly I do believe that the zoning does protect against any future development, provided it's I'll back that up. Let me just say that any backlot development would be subject to the policies of the Haliburton OP and the local OP, and certainly the zoning is not going to facilitate any future backlot development.
And just quickly to add to that, Ken, I believe the most recent amendment to the OPA makes it so that there can be only one severance on this property. We can't do multiple severances.
Yeah, that's correct. Good point, Megan. Yeah, that the policy has changed. So, and
the previous application was under the previous OPA, which did allow for multiple, but now we're at just one per property.
Correct. Thank you. Yes.
Member Roberts, you have a question?
Thank you. I do. It's jumping all over the place, but it is going back to the conditions, which is condition number 4. About the rezone to shoreline residential exception to recognize the deficient lot frontage. So what I can't find the actual application quickly, but I do remember it was under 60 meters of what would be the retained, correct? So if 30, what's the minimum shoreline lot frontage? And why would we accept a severance where we're minimizing the impact on the lake?
Through the chair, the policies do permit a shorter lot frontage. The lot frontage along the retained is 54 or just under 55 meters. The severed is 60. So we're talking about a 5 meter reduction, which is permitted under the policy, provided that you can demonstrate access, and there's a few other requirements which we have met. And certainly when we are talking about frontage, you really are talking about unencumbered access. That's what we're looking at, that, and also ensuring that there is adequate spacing between existing development and proposed development. And it is our opinion that the 5 meter reduction is fairly minor. It's not a significant reduction. And adding to that, there's a significant area towards the rear of the property where you could put a dwelling unit if you needed to. There's space on the property, so we're not necessarily restricted because of that reduction in the from 5 meters from the 60 meter typical requirement.
Does that answer your question?
Sorry, yes, it does, to a certain extent, except that, I know certainly in some municipalities, it's a hard and fast, any new lot creation, that is the minimum frontage. And if you can't provide that, regardless of what you've got in the back or how far back you can put your cottage, it's a impact on the lake. So I was just surprised to see this file, that while it's the retained, mind you, but still will have a lesser lot coverage on the lake than is required.
Right. Okay, can we bring in the next delegate?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The next one is Paul, so allow him to chat.
All dice.
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Dice.
Paul, you're unmuted. If you could address the chair, that would be great.
Can you hear me?
There we go, Paul. Thank you.
Okay, just changed microphones. Anyways, no, I was just on the Zoom call. I wasn't here to talk. Sorry.
Okay.
Good. Okay.
Then we will bring in the next delegate.
Right. This will be Ray.
Ray Legault.
Yes.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I've had to live beside all this commotion for the last couple of years. We own the properties, the two properties immediately south of the parish property. And to say that it has been disconcerting is putting it mildly. I have just so that I understand what has preceded what I'm about to say, I just want to get some clarification. Are we agreeing now that access to the severed property is through the gravel road and not access to four-wheel drive? That's correct, I believe.
That's where we're at right now, yes.
Okay. You'll appreciate this concern. The first application submitted in 2020, as some of you committee members may be aware, some of you may not be aware, had a number of lots surveyed immediately behind the cottages, our cottages on Bashcon Lake, all running all the way from four-wheel drive up through Fern Gully. Now you're looking at a one-dimensional map. Perhaps I have to ask you again, Steve, to put up your map or sketch. This hopefully will be the last time you have to do it, but to me, it's absolutely critical in terms of what happens going forward.
So you can see it now.
And may I ask you this? Did you see Melissa Markham's, did she submit a sketch of her own showing the rerouting of the gravel road and so on and so forth?
I didn't. I did see her submission. I can't recall the attachment that shows the rerouting of the road, but she did provide comments.
Okay.
And she did speak tonight at the meeting.
Yes, and I did hear her.
Attached to her submission.
Yes. Okay. Well, in the first submission submitted by the parishes, all along four-wheel drive and Fern Gully, there were surveyed lots. And there was access, Mr. Parrish was looking for access to four-wheel drive into the severed property and a right-of-way along our mutual property line to the water. I had not heard, I was in Florida at the time when I received this and I was totally alarmed. So we had to do what we had to do and we got on it right off the bat. But in what you're saying here tonight, and I'm a layman, so you have to forgive me, there is no possibility of a right-of-way being given from the gravel road down to the lake. And can that be eliminated in this presentation tonight? Because in the presentation in 2020, the access to four-wheel drive was being requested, and then a right-of-way was being requested down to the lake on our property line. I want to know if there is any possibility tonight that if you give access, if the access to the severed property is through the gravel road, that there can be no other roads built such that they create a right-of-way down to the lake. And there are a whole lot of reasons for that concern, a lot of concern. One of the real concerns that we thought, having first looked at the first application, was that Mr. Parrish was seriously looking at developing lots along four-wheel drive and up through Fern Gully, giving them access to the severed property and a right-of-way down to the lake. He could then sell these lots as water access lots. I would like to know if in what we're doing tonight, that possibility is being removed entirely.
Through the chair, I can speak to this briefly if you'd like.
Yes, absolutely.
Hi, Ray. So to begin with, this is a completely new application than the application that was submitted in 2020. And now the official plan has been amended that there can only be one severance on this property. And that is the severance we're talking about today, which is one lot, not multiple lots. And multiple lots would need a plan of subdivision, a way different system than we're talking about today. But we're talking about one lot, and that's all that is allowed on this property now under the official plan. Okay, and then the additional comment I would make is that there is no right of way needed to access the water. Both the retained lands and the severed lands have water frontage. So there would be no right of way that would be serving these properties to the water because they own some water frontage. They have access. I hope that answers your question. While I have the attention of the committee, Member Roberts, I also wanted to point out that I spoke to my client, and with regard to why there's a minimum frontage along the water is because there's so much backlot in the retained lands that the large area at the back offsets the shortage at the shoreline. And that's been approved by township planning and Haliburton planning.
I haven't finished speaking. Hello.
I just wanted to add that in, Ray. You can go ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead, Ray.
Yes, thank you. I'm certainly not finished. I would say just to Ms. Beck's comments, I think the reason why Mr. Parrish wants a little bit less room on the severed property at the front, I don't know what you call it, setback or whatever, is that if he has 3 meters, the retained lands actually have access to what he calls the boathouse. And the severed property would not have that. I'm sure that's the reason why. I just want to make a couple of other comments. Okay. The workshop on the sketch is not a workshop. It is a residence. There are heated floors. There are bedrooms in that building, and Mr. and Mrs. Parrish are often reside in that property. Here's my final point, and this is a real concern. And especially it was a major concern when you were looking at giving access to four-wheel drive. West of four-wheel drive, Doug Rumble alluded to it. West of four-wheel drive, if you ran if this were a three-dimensional map, the land falls significantly from Bashcon Lake Road down to four-wheel drive and down to the lake. Mr. Parrish dug a hole in the ground, a pond that is in places 40 feet deep. And this, you're still hearing me?
Yes.
Yes. This pond overflows. There is a huge discharge pipe on the east side of that pond. And in the spring, when we have the melting snow, that discharge pipe releases a torrent of water down toward a four-wheel drive and then down through our cottage properties down to the lake. We have installed larger culverts. My next door neighbor, Bob Keys, and I installed a sluiceway to try to handle this runoff. And what we have done cannot handle this enormous torrent of water that comes toward us in the springtime. So when Doug Rumble was making the point about, is there any way that you can do anything to mitigate the damages that are probably going to be done? This year is probably going to be a nightmare because we've had so much snow. That whole part of it's very destructive. I guess I don't have much else to say, but I do have that, and it's a great concern. The right of way down to the lake was a great concern, and the discharge from this pond is also a great concern.
Thank you, Mr.
So,
Legault.
when you're talking about doing anything with the retained lands, I don't know whether there's anything that you can do to help mitigate the damage.
I can, through the chair, I can quickly speak to that.
Okay.
Just to advise Ray, in August 2020, our client had M&R attend the property, look at the pond. They had no concerns. I have emails from the M&R that I'm happy to submit to Haliburton Planning to be passed on however it needs to be. And of course, they had no concerns. They said that the pond does not require a permit to take water from the ministry, and based on their inspection, they had no issues. So there's that comment. Also, again, I want to clarify, Steve, you don't have to bring up the map, but our client resides on the severed parcel in the larger blue building. The workshop, yes, it has heated floors, but it does not have any bedrooms. And in the inspections by the township, they'd be able to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, could I just have one more chance to rebut?
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I would like Ms. Beck to come in a couple of weeks when the melting snows are in effect and that pond overflows, and you see the water, the destructive force of that water. It has flooded four-wheel drive 2 years. There is a real possibility that it's going to undermine some of it. It's going over the road now. I think a lot of it is going under the road, and we're very concerned about sinkholes and real damage being done to our property. Whether that has to be handled by the lawyers or not, I don't know. But if you're talking about good planning, and I am, I'll tell you that is a major concern. And the MNR took a look at it in August in one of the driest summers that we've ever had.
If I could ask if members of the committee have any questions for Mr. Legault. Okay, thank you, Mr. Legault. Your comments are much appreciated. I believe we still have further delegations.
Yes, I'll bring in Thomas Steele now, if he's still there.
Who is the president of the Bashcon Lake Association.
That's correct. I'm here now.
Good evening, Mr. Steele.
Good evening, members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to attend. As Ray has said, I've heard a lot of very interesting comments so far this evening. My comments can be fairly short. Our concern as a lake is stress in the lake and use of the lake to, contribute to algae blooms and et cetera. So we certainly do not want to have, and as Ray explained back in 2020, the first plans that came out certainly look like backlots where the intention of the parish is to make the most money they possibly could out of the land that they purchased. Our concerns are, and as I wrote in my letter, that, and I do not believe that this has been fulfilled yet, but Algonquin Highlands asked that a principal use being established on the retained lands And we still have not been clarified as to what the retained lands are actually going to be used for. The retained lot is 180 some feet, I believe, which is certainly great access for the 34 acres, whatever, that are on the backland. And that's certainly not what we want to have for our lake. So basically, in conclusion, and I really don't have, because most of the things have been said, we just want to make sure that when you, as a committee, approve or disapprove this, that if you do approve it, that there are certainly restrictions to lake access from the lots that behind the retained land, and that there is no lake access. And that's the key ingredients from the Lake Association. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mr. Steele. Are there any questions from the committee? Member Schneider?
So just to comment on what Mr. Steele has said there, what I'm seeing, and unless it's different, please correct me, the retained land is one lot and it has access to the lake. Correct?
Right.
Yes.
That's correct. And my point is that that retained lot has access to 34 acres behind it, which means that in essence, that lot could be used as access for 34 acres. If they sold those lots off as back lots, 34 acres can be now used. This is the access to the lake.
So one other comment, I believe I've heard that under the current policies of the municipality, no further severance is possible.
Then that's good. If that's the case, we're pleased.
Yeah, and through the chair, if I may, it's Kent Randall again. Yeah, and just to add to that, like the policies are very restrictive when it comes to as all of you are likely aware, they're very restrictive when it comes to lot creation in waterfront areas, particularly backlots. And the policies are very prohibitive to that sort of development. I don't like to try to speculate, but it would be the policies don't necessarily allow for something like that to occur in the future. And this particular application before you right now is for 2 waterfront lots.
If I can ask one more question and then I'll be gone.
Okay.
What is Mr. Parrish's use of the lot, the retained lot? What's he planning to do with that?
So through the chair to the speaker, it is for a single detached dwelling, for a cottage. That is what it's been proposed. I recall someone mentioned that the planning report didn't mention that. It does mention that. That is the proposed use, and that's what it will be zoned for. So it won't permit any other future development or anything of that nature.
Thank you, Ken.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Steele. The comments appreciated. Do we have another delegation?
We have 2 individuals, James and Nicole. I'm not sure they're not on my list. I'm not sure if they can raise their hand if they want to speak to the Paris application.
I'm not sure they're able to do that, Steve, unless you bring them in.
All right.
Yeah, sorry.
I'll try James, see if he's interested in this application or another one. I don't see him responding, and so I will mute him again.
I see 2 other names, Taylor and Red Clay.
They're not with us, so I will disable him, and I'll see if Nicole was here, and now she's gone. So that would appear to be all that I have for this application.
Okay, well, I'm looking for, this would appear to be a rather complicated application. Member Roberts.
Thank you. Yes, it's an interesting night to be an alternate. But I did serve on this
I'm right
committee
into the
for,
thick of things.
I did for 4 years prior. And so I do have knowledge of land division. It's not like I'm just thrown in one night, don't know what I'm doing. And generally speaking, this is a very difficult map to look at because it's just that one large map. And Steve, I am not going to ask you to put it back up on the screen. However, generally, no, I know you know how to do it, but I'm not going to ask. My question is, generally, when I was on land division and someone was creating a new lot, particularly on the lake front, you had to show where a building envelope would be and where 2 potential septic systems could be in the event that one failed. And we want to make sure that they met all lot line requirements. So we weren't setting up a lot for needing a minor variance and saying, oh, we created this lot. We already know that it's 55 meters at the shore, but now with this circle of a driveway or road, whatever that's called, where is the dwelling going? Where is the septic envelopes? And do they meet all lot requirements?
So your question, if I were to look at the report and back to the conditions. So if you look at condition number 11, that would be the operative condition that would address the concerns that you've just raised. Certainly for one septic system, and I'm not sure if Algonquin Highlands looks for what they call a reserve system area, but that's what the site development plan will accomplish, is to define a building envelope and ensure that it complies with the zoning requirements.
So generally, when in my experience on land division before, the applicant actually showed that at land division. So not, yes, it's in there as a condition, and I understand that, but because I see a roadway in there that, you know, I'm wondering, first of all, can they meet the 30-meter setback from the shoreline? Can they meet, I would have preferred that to be at this stage. I see that it's a condition. I don't know if the applicant's agents want to speak to that, or.
Well, if I might say it has to meet the 30-meter requirement. So.
Yeah, and I would add, it's through the chair, it's Kent Randall again. I would add that, yeah, we absolutely can meet those setbacks. You know, as I had said, we're looking at a reduction of 5 meters of the frontage. It does not pinch in too much as you get to the back. There's significant space that back there to accommodate it. We've been to the site, so we have you know, supreme confidence that there's sufficient space there and that we would meet that condition. And should we not meet that condition, of course the conditions couldn't be fulfilled and the consent would lapse.
Through the chair, I'd add that the septic system on the retained as well as the severed, there's 2, are new and have been approved by the health department. Permits are filed with the health department, so that has also been addressed.
I'm sorry, would you say that again, Megan?
Yeah. There's 2 new septics, one on the retained, one on the severed, and those have been approved by the health department, permits filed with the health department, so that has already been addressed.
The health department?
Yes, I believe it's.
Septics are approved by the township.
Oh, sorry. Yes, but they are filed and new and approved through the township.
I would have to question that. My apologies, but I don't believe that there would be a septic system approved without knowledge of what's being built.
Our client advised that there is one already on there for both properties. We can forward the documentation.
Yeah, that's something I don't think any of us can answer definitively tonight.
Kent, are you aware of anything? That's what Mr. Parrish advised me.
Yeah, I believe that the septic on the retained is serving that workshop. I'm not sure though.
Yeah, there would have to be some work and some investigation done on the septic system for the retained parcel. Are there other questions from the committee at this point? Mr. Snyder?
So just a couple of comments. Back to Kent and Melissa Markham had made this point about the dual zoning. I did check the current zoning map, and the property is currently zoned shoreline residential and rural. And I would expect that zoning would carry over to the new lot and the retained lot. The other questions I had, I just want to, I'm surprised there hasn't been, Andrea's mentioned it, more focus on the undersized frontage on the retained lot. I'm also somewhat concerned with the side yard setback. I've sort of looked at the diagram and I don't see a way to alleviate both of those problems. And then the other question I have is, which seems to be hanging out there, you've said it's going to be built with a primary residence. There's a lot of auxiliary structures on that lot now. I am wondering whether some of them should be removed. And I'm wondering whether there should be a timeline placed on if the auxiliary structures are going to stay, then maybe there should be a timeline on when the residence is built. I don't know who wants to answer those, but those are my comments.
I
Sorry,
just
Madam Chair.
ask Steve if this committee can put that sort of condition on our approval.
Well, to put timelines on the construction, no, you're actually bound by the regulations of the Planning Act when it comes to lot creation. So now we have 2 years to satisfy conditions. So I would say no, it's not practical in this case to put timelines for the construction of the new dwelling. There has been occasions where structures have to be removed, and that has appeared as conditions of approval previously.
Member Roberts, did you have another question?
Just to say, because I sit on council and so see these things a lot, that would be a requirement at the local level under their zoning. And that happens a lot of times. It's not at this table that we need to make that decision. Yeah, that would happen in Algonquin Highlands, but it will.
Madam Chair, if I may just speak to the question of Member Snyder about the frontage, because this was brought up by Member Roberts as well. And the Algonquin Highlands official plan specifically has a policy in it that does permit a reduced frontage from 60 meters, provided that the property is large enough to accommodate development, and it can be done through either minor variance or zoning bylaw amendment. So it is, and I understand that there are other municipalities that it's 60 or bust, or whatever frontage or bust, but certainly Algonquin Highlands does have that policy in its official plan, and it's something that we believe that we have we conform to.
That's correct. We did speak about that at the Algonquin Highlands meeting. I have to say I'm not sure that all members of council were happy about the application, but that is in our policies. Other questions? My concern is that we're considering making amendments to the conditions. There seem to be a few things that we need to clarify. I'm not sure that I'd be ready to say yay to approvals at this point. Steve.
Just to Councillor Snyder, remark about the side yard for the existing cottage. So I just did a quick look at the township planner's report, and he noted that the existing dwelling on the proposed severed lands will also need to be recognized through zoning bylaw amendment, as it is located 3.46 meters from the proposed easterly lot line, where 6 meters is required. So part of the conditions will require rezoning, and they'll pick up the non-compliance for that side yard in special exception on the severed lands.
Can this committee request that split zoning be retained?
Well, I would, here's what I would suggest. If the committee's going to propose, or at least if they're going to move that it be deferred, I think it would behoove us as planners to consult together, us, the applicant's planner and the township planner, to figure out how to approach the rezoning of the retained lands to effectively address some of the concerns that have been raised tonight. I was taking a look at the environmental study. There's a fair bit of identified lands that could go into an EP zone, and it would be worthwhile for us to have a discussion and bring back an addendum to the report that reflects some of the concerns and how we would address them through zoning.
Personally, I would like to see that take place. I would rather that there be that discussion take place with all three parties rather than us turning down the application or further complicating things. But I'd look to the committee for comments or thoughts on that. Bill.
I agree with you, Madam Chair, that there's still too many outstanding issues that needs clarification for me to make a decision anyway on this tonight. I've been making notes, and I've got quite a few notes here about my concern is about the septic system on the retained land, as you're a concern as well. Can you have a septic system without a residence or a building there? And I heard it was a new septic system. Confirmation, I would be making my decision based on the gravel driveway going all the way over to the new lot, but yet on the map I'm looking at, it stops short of the property line. There were some questions about where should the existing driveway at the north end of the property, the loop, is it closed at the property line, or does it still come onto the retained land and closes at the new property? So if there can be some sort of a clarification if before I make my decision, that'd be much appreciated.
I'm seeing nodding from Councillor Roberts, and your thoughts, Mr. Snyder?
Yeah, I would agree with deferring and getting some of these issues clarified. It seems a little out of the normal to approve an access to a property without actually seeing it on, at least sketched on the paper.
So having heard that, could I have a mover and a seconder to hear a motion to defer? Go ahead, Steve, before we do that.
Just as you make your motion, I would ask that the committee provide us and the applicant direction in terms of what things they would like to see addressed. I heard tonight a sketch for the adjustment to the proposed right-of-way would be one. I think we heard something to the effect of development envelope for the retained lands.
And what is proposed, well, I guess that has been clarified, that there's a cottage being proposed.
Yeah. So
how we propose to close off the upper loop road.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I think clarification on the zoning of both severed and retained lands. So.
Correct, and clarification on the septic
right
system.
Yep.
Was there anything else that we need to include in that list for clarification? And do either you, Kent or Megan, have any questions or need clarification on anything?
From my perspective, Madam Chair, I don't believe I do. I think we're happy to provide that information, and I was going to suggest that, you know, should the committee defer, that we're happy to show a building envelope and provide some clarity in terms of what can be developed on the site.
And I think that there would be also a discussion on split zoning.
Yes, and absolutely, and I think that it's a good idea that we I have the discussion with Steve and perhaps the local planner as well.
I agree. Thank you.
Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder then for deferral?
I'll move it.
Roberts and Flakes. You ready for that, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
Well, I'll do my best, Chair Danielson. Moved by Member Roberts, second by Member Blakes. Be it resolved that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton received the report entitled Land Division Staff Report H-28 of 21, Parish/New Lot, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton defers a decision on application for consent H-2821 for the following reasons: to allow the county planner time to meet with the applicant's planner and the township planner to address the concerns raised by committee and members of the public in attendance at the meeting this evening.
All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So the decision that the application be deferred, Member Roberts, yea or nay?
Yay.
Member Snyder?
Yay.
Member Blakes?
Yay.
Chair Danielson?
Yay. Thank you. That was one of the more challenging applications that we've dealt with. So next up is item number 7.3, application by Bovenizer to grant an easement for right-of-way.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This application is actually related to the next one as well. Involves the creation of right-of-ways that were missed over a period of years, and they're just trying to correct legal title to ensure that they do have access out to the main public road servicing this area. There is I guess one of the applicants is in attendance and may wish to speak to it. In terms of right-of-ways, there's lots in cottage country. They're considered driveways are considered incidental or accessory uses to a primary use, such as a cottage. The tricky thing when dealing with right-of-ways is just ensuring that we do have the necessary legal descriptions caught in the conditions of approval. So you can see in condition number 3, there is a variety of lands impacted by this right-of-way and the right-of-way on the next application as well. So Dysart was consulted on this, and they did provide standard set of conditions. And it'll be the applicant's responsibility to clear those conditions and give the Secretary Treasurer a letter saying that the township is satisfied at the end of the final approval. Thank you. I will let William talk if he's still there.
Good evening, Mr. Belfry. You wish to speak to the application?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much. Good evening, Madam Chair and Committee. Just had hoped that Chris Bishop or Rodney Geyer would be on this call to represent me, but I guess they didn't. It was quite a simple idea of pushing the road further back from the lake. It was an original, from what I understand, a historical logging road, and that the 7 cottages that use the road have been using for 40, 50, 60 years. So I just wanted to move the road back a little bit further from the front door of my cottage, and that in turn straightened the road out, gave it better access for the people down the road. And when, or if the committee approves this, then David Shapiro will be granting right of way for the other 7 cottagers down the road. That's all. Thank you.
Do any members of the committee have questions or comments? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to put a motion on the floor? Member Snyder and seconded by Member Blakes. Thank you.
Moved by Member Schneider, second by Member Blakes, be it resolved that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton receive the report entitled Land Division Staff Report Consent H-002 of 2022, Bovenizer for right-of-way, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton approve the consent as shown on the severance sketch, subject to conditions of approval as described in the said report. The decision of the Land Division Committee is that provisional consent be granted. Member Roberts, yea or nay?
Yay.
Member Snyder?
Yay.
Member Blakes?
Yay.
Chair Danielson?
Okay. That's carried. Thank you. So we will move forward to the application by Belfry and basically for the other portion of the easement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As stated in the previous application, this is for a right-of-way. Condition number 3 deals with the particulars of the benefiting cottage properties. There's actually 8 in this particular example of the right-of-way request. Again, the matter was presented to Dysart. They did provide comments and listed their conditions, which are contained in the recommendation. And again, it's as stated by the applicant, it's for a driveway, just a different orientation. But as a result of the move, you have to account for the benefiting properties, hence the need for condition number 3. Thank you.
Any questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder for the resolution? Member Roberts, seconded by Member Snyder. Thank you.
Moved by Member Roberts, second by Member Schneider. Be it resolved that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton receive the report entitled Land Division Staff Report Consent H-003 of 2022 in the name of Belfry, right of way, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton approve the consent as shown on the severance sketch, subject to the conditions of approval as described in the said report. So the decision is that provisional consent be granted. Member Roberts, yea or nay?
For me, yay.
Thank you. Member Snyder?
Yay.
Member Blakes?
Yay.
Chair Danielson?
Yay.
Thank you.
That's carried. Next is a 7.5 application by Hammerhead Holdings to grant an easement for a right-of-way.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Similar to the previous 2 applications, this is a consent to grant right-of-way. Came to the attention of the current owner that the severance that occurred several years ago, there was an error made where it wasn't identified the right-of-way, and to correct title, the applicant is wishing to establish a right-of-way to allow this the subject lands or the benefiting lands to have access out to a legal public publicly maintained road. And so this is the essence of the application. And again, condition number 3 is the operative one, which lists the benefiting lands. As I understand it, this matter is to facilitate the sale of the benefiting property. And the committee should note that most recently we did have a request by the Township of Minden Hills to defer this matter. They would like to present it to their council, which will occur just at the end of this month. And if committee does grant the deferral request, we'll have this back to Land Division Committee next month. Thank you.
Are there any questions about that? Could I have a mover and a seconder to defer?
I'll move it.
Moved by Member Blake, seconded by Member Roberts.
Moved by Member Blake, second by Member Roberts, be it resolved, the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton received the report entitled Land Division Staff Report Consent H-004 of 2022, Hammerhead Holdings Limited for a right-of-way, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton defer its consideration of this consent to allow the Council of the Township of Minden Hills the opportunity to review its merits. The decision is that this application be deferred. Member Roberts, yea or nay?
Yay.
Member Snyder?
Yay.
Member Blakes?
Yay.
Chair Danielson?
Yay.
Thank you.
Okay, the next application is, I hope I haven't lost my place here. 7.6, Colpitts and Ecclestone, which I believe is also a recommendation for deferral.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This, very similar to the Belfry application, the existing driveway is to be moved away from a newly reconstructed cottage, and that affects the 3 neighboring properties. So again, condition number 3 spells out the benefiting lands. And as you stated, the township has requested a deferral so they can present this matter to their council later in the month. Thank you.
Any questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder to defer? Member Blakes, second by Member Snyder.
Moved by Member Blake, second by Member Snyder, be it resolved that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton received the report entitled Land Division Staff Report Consent H-006 of 2022 in the name of Colpitts and Ecclestones for a right-of-way, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton defer its consideration of this consent to allow the Council of the Township of Minden Hills the opportunity to review its merits. The decision is that the application be deferred. Member Roberts, yea or nay?
Yay.
Member Snyder?
Yay.
Member Blakes?
Yay.
Chair Danielson?
Yay.
Thank you.
Okay, the next 2 items, 7.7 and 7.8, are both submitted by Lewis for the severance of 2 lots. If you'd like to review the first of these 2 files.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. As noted, it is a severance of a rural lot newly created. And in terms of provincial policy, it's considered to be in the rural lands of the county. It's designated as such in the county official plan, and it also has a similar designation in the Highlands East official plan. In terms of permitted uses, single detached dwellings are permitted on rural, what would be termed rural residential lots. The Township of Highlands East had a fulsome review of that. They did provide comments on this application. Their council resolved to support the application subject to conditions, and those conditions appear in the staff report. Of note, since this is a new rural residential lot, they'll be subject to parkland dedication, which is a set fee. And they also are required to rezone the severed and retained lands accordingly. So with that, the committee does have the report, and I note that the applicant is in the audience, and I can bring him in to speak to the application.
Does he wish to speak to the application?
He is now on.
Only if I need to.
Okay, Mr. Lewis, go ahead.
I have a 200-acre lot, and I'd like to separate 2 5-acre lots at the back of my property. It's a municipal road year-round, and as far as I know, everyone agrees with it so far. So,
Do any of the members of the committee have questions on this application? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to grant approval of the application? Member Roberts, or did you have a question?
I do have a question and I'll move it. Just for clarification, because it's 200 acres and you're severing 2 parcels, 2 5-acre parcels. Is that the last time that you can sever? Is that done then?
as the township has said, yes, that's the only thing I can do.
Okay, just so you knew that once you do that, your 2 severances are done. Okay, I will still move. Thank you.
Seconded by Member Snyder.
Moved by Member Roberts, second by Member Snyder. Be it resolved that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton received the report entitled Land Division Staff Report H-18 of 2022 in the name of Lewis, new lot number 1, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton approve the consent shown on the severance sketch, subject to the conditions of approval as described in the said report. The decision of the committee is that provisional consent be granted. Member Roberts?
Yay.
Yay or nay? Member Snyder? Yay or nay?
Yay.
Member Blakes?
Yay.
Chair Danielson?
Yay.
Carried.
Carried. Next is the second of the 2 parcels.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Again, just to recap, the property is in an area considered rural lands within the county. The lands are designated rural lands in the county official plan, and similarly, it's in a rural area of Highlands East official plan. In terms of consistency and conformity with these planning documents, the proposal meets the policy requirements. Township Council did resolve to support the application subject to conditions, and those conditions are reflected in the staff report. Thank you.
Any questions? Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor, Member Roberts and Member Snyder.
Moved by Member Roberts, second by Member Snyder. Be it resolved that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton received the report entitled Land Division Staff Report H-19 of 2022 in the name of Lewis, new lot number 2, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton approve the consent as shown on the severance sketch, subject to the conditions of approval as described in the said report. The decision is that provisional consent be granted. Member Roberts, yay or nay?
Yay.
Member Snyder?
Yay.
Member Blakes, yay or nay?
Yay.
Chair Danielson, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you. That's carried.
Okay, and the last application is by Fletcher to grant a right-of-way.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, this application has a bit of history insofar as that the benefiting property was isolated from the public road to the east and actually required the sale of the concession road allowance to facilitate access to the subject property. And the subject property, it is requested that committee grant a right-of-way across lands, these lands for the benefit of the cottage that's located to the west. Similarly to the other Minden Hills application, there is a request that this matter be deferred so that the Township Council can consider it later this month. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? If I could have then a motion to defer. Mover and a seconder, Mr. Blakes, and seconder, Member Roberts.
Moved by Member Blake, second by Member Roberts, be it resolved that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton received the report entitled Land Division Staff Report Consent H-20 of 22 in the name of Fletcher for a right-of-way, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton defer its consideration of the consent to allow the Council of the Township of Minden Hills the opportunity to review its merits. The decision is that the Land Division Committee the decision is that the application be deferred. Member Roberts, yea or nay?
Yay.
Member Schneider, yea or nay?
Yay. Yay.
Blakes, yea or nay?
Yay.
Chair Danielson, yea or nay?
Yay,
Thank you.
that's carried. Thank you. There is no correspondence to deal with. I don't believe we have any separate reports. Under other business, I believe that Steve wanted to just have a little bit of a chat about the planning reports. We had talked about the new format of planning reports, and you've seen them now. We just wanted to hear, I should maybe let Steve talk, but I think what we were looking for was, are these reports sufficient for your needs? Do they give you enough information? Is there anything else that you would like to see included with them? Does that kind of cover your
That's correct.
questions?
Yes, I do. I'll have to apologize to the committee. I know I put a bit of extra stress on Michelle this past week. I was off on a personal matter the week before, so I did lose almost a full week of time to prepare reports and get them to her. So she did a yeoman's job there to get the agenda finalized, but we did leave it late, and that's because of my family matters. So thank you. But I did want to say to committee, we were hoping to streamline things so that it made it the processing of the committee meeting smooth, and we're hoping to achieve that. And really, all I want from the committee tonight is to see any areas that you would like further tweaked.
Thoughts on the report, Sal? Go ahead, Bill, and then Bob.
No, I like the reports. They were very good, very clear, very concise. The only thing, I know we discussed it, and maybe it's difficult sometimes, is a municipal address.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
We'll certainly make moves towards adding those.
Thank you.
Okay, Bob?
I like accessing things through Civic Web. My request is it possible to have discrete file names for each application? I do a lot of work on my phone, and every time I go in and look at the file, it downloads it, and then when I go back and look at the next one, it wants to overwrite the one I just downloaded because it has the same file name. Like every application is called LD report. So I don't know whether you can put file name in the file name.
Okay, well, we'll have to experiment with that one. It might be that we use the surname, that might alleviate that.
Yeah,
that would work. Yeah, and then my other, and this is probably more my problem. I always was looking for your email saying the agenda's out, and I didn't get one, and it wasn't until I looked at my calendar and said, "Oh, I better get to work here." So
that's a result of Steve being off for some time, and that's not
okay.
something that would normally we would get advance notice that the
Agenda's up.
Yeah. I had spoke. Oh, go ahead, Andrea.
Well, you can go ahead because I'm only on for tonight. I mean, it might serve another time this year, but go ahead and I'll go after you.
One of the things that I had discovered, and I'm not sure if anyone else had this same problem, but there were several of the applications that somehow portions of them became compressed and vertically, not horizontally, but they just kind of squeezed down and were compressed, and I couldn't see all the information. And for the most part, it was, I could see what I needed to see, but there was one of the applications where, it was the Lewis. I wanted to be able to see the lot size of the severed parcels, and I couldn't read that on the application. So I'm not sure how that happened, because Michelle looked at her documents and they all looked just fine. Did anybody else have any compressed portions of their documents?
I just had one on the parish one. There were a couple of documents that I couldn't really read. I don't know whether it was just whenever they were transferred onto the computer that compressed them a bit, but like everything else seemed to be okay.
Yeah, it was just parts of the applications. And the only other thing that I really like to see, because after having read, the applications and all the supporting documentation, I'm a really visual person, and I really need to see the plan or sketches, so I can clearly see what's going on. I think that helps a lot, and we could really see that tonight with the number of times that we asked Per Steve to, because you bring that sketch up again. That I really need to see a sketch attached to the application, and in one case that didn't happen this time, but
yeah, it was unfortunate for the parish one. It actually wasn't attached, so that was our I missed that, I guess. So
so sounds like your report format is good. It's working for us all, and that's great.
So if I may add, thanks. Yeah, so I didn't have any trouble reading everything, and no, there wasn't but it doesn't matter. The agenda sent out, but it's always there on Civic Web. The more information you can put in that executive summary, the more helpful it is. For as an example, on the Lewis file, the purpose and effect of the application is to grant creation of a new lot, but I didn't know the size of the lot and the site. So it was a bit of flipping back and forth between two things. So even just to include severed, and you can use metric, I can calculate, even though I always go hectare. I don't know what that is, but I think the more information in the executive summary, the purpose of, and I think there was one other one even in the parish, and maybe that was in there, is to create a seasonal dwelling or something, really helps add. Sure. And back to the maps, and a good example in the parish one is you got one big, huge map, and then zoom in and do the proposed area. Because we had the right of way and everything. So there could actually be a couple of maps included when it's a very large file, because what happens on any device, I don't know how you do it on a phone. That would be like impossible. But even iPad, laptop, monitor, you start zooming and it loses. So it'd be better at your end to do multiple maps included in the package. That's it. It was great.
Awesome.
Okay, there's no closed session. So our next meeting is scheduled for April the 11th. I believe that's the date. Yep. Hopefully that works for everyone. Before adjournment, I would like to thank Michelle for taking on the extra load for this meeting. It was a big meeting of all times to have a gigantic meeting. So thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Condolences to you, Steve, for the loss of your family member. It's a tough time, and so we appreciate that you're here with us. Yeah. And are up to date on the files. And thank you, Andrea. I know that you feel rotten, so thank you for sticking with us for the evening.
I had to write my husband a note, bring me a nighttime Tylenol, please. I'm going to get my PJs on right now.
Okay. Thank everybody.
Your camera's off.
Could I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Bill, seconded by
Sure.
Okay, by Andrea. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.